Channel with today's news, and now I'll proceed to the details. The Global Society of Tigray Scholars and Professionals issued a statement on Thursday, 31st of March, state that it hasn't seen any improvements in humanitarian access and services remain blocked, despite the humanitarian truce declared. The statement said strict monitoring, verification, and reporting mechanism should be established for the implementation of any further arguments on humanitarian access. For more, Aril Zagabo reports.
GST's Global Society of Tigray Scholars and Professionals issued a statement on Thursday stating that it has not learned of any improvements in access to aid even after the declaration of humanitarian truce. The statement said services that could be restored with a flick of switch on the side of Abiy Ahmed's government would avert significant amount of humanitarian challenges in Tigray. But the failure of Ethiopian government to live up its widely celebrated promises showed that the Abiy Ahmed government is unwilling to end the siege on the people of Tigray. The statement strongly urged that humanitarian access to the millions in need should be decoupled from any sort of political preconditions. The GSTS pleads the international community to take the following measures urgently. Open roads to Tigray, including by establishing lifeline corridor from Sudan to Tigray under a demilitarized route for safe passage of humanitarian supplies. Establish strict monitoring, verification, and reporting mechanism for implementation of any further agreements on humanitarian access. Monetize humanitarian assets through the transfer of cash to those in need of aid which can be delivered by flights. Conduct an urgent and massive aerial delivery, air bridge of humanitarian aid to Tigray. It is to be recalled that the Ethiopian government has declared unilateral humanitarian truce on 22nd of March 2022 and that all services remain blocked and no humanitarian aid has reached Tigray until this statement was issued.
Due to the deliberate destruction of health facilities and 9 months-long siege imposed by the Ethiopian government, all medical supplies in Tigray have been depleted. Aid agencies have been asking for a humanitarian corridor to provide supplies despite continued refusal by the Ethiopian government. The international community of Red Cross in Ethiopia told the BBC that it has been denied access via land route even after the declaration of humanitarian truce. For more, Saron Zakai reports.
On the first 8 months of the year-and-a-half-long war on Tigray, health system was one of the deliberate targets of destruction by the allied forces of Ethiopia and Eritrea. As a result of this and the 9 months-long all-encompassing siege imposed on the people of Tigray, the once promising health system has now collapsed. The International Committee of Red Cross in Ethiopia announced that even after the declaration of humanitarian truce, access via land route is not granted. After 5 months-long denial of access, ICRC was allowed into Tigray in January. For the past 3 months, the organization has been delivering a limited amount of life-saving medical supplies via air. In an interview with BBC, Fatima Seder, ICRC spokesperson in Ethiopia, stated that the amount of life-saving medical supplies airlifted into Tigray is almost negligible compared to the amount of supplies needed to respond to the urgent health needs in Tigray. Fatima described their current deliveries as a drop to the ocean. As a result, doctors in Tigray are forced to reuse medical equipments such as gloves. The spokesperson also stated that ICRC Ethiopia hasn't been allowed to deliver medical supplies via land route, and that if access was granted via land, it would have boosted the organization's delivery of supplies and millions would be saved. It is to be remembered that Fatima recently reported the devastating situation in Eider Comprehensive Specialized Hospital, where she cautioned the need for immediate delivery of life-saving medical supplies.
We are here in Eider Hospital in the north of Ethiopia in the region of Tigray. We've been visiting the hospital where emergency rooms are full, almost double of their capacity. For 600 beds, there are 1,000 patients. People are sitting in the corridor waiting for treatment. At the same time, chronic diseases department, like it can be oncology, department for diabetes patients, hypertension, HIV, are almost empty because of the lack of medicine. So doctors have been asking their patient either to go back home or to get medicine from the outside to be able to be treated.
Civilians have become the main target of the Ethiopian forces and allies in the war on Tigray. According to a new finding by Ghent University, 500,000 Tigrayans died due to the conflict. Tigray Human Rights Advocacy Network, an association formed by 11 civic societies, has now said that it will take part in an impartial investigation of the crimes committed on the people of Tigray. For more, Wintakitana.
Ethiopian government, together with its allies, have committed horrible atrocities such as massacres, sexual violence, looting and destruction of public properties, not to mention the all-encompassing siege that has been imposed by the Ethiopian government that has blocked the entrance of humanitarian aid, including food and medication. Tigray Human Rights Advocacy Network, an association of 11 civic societies, is a non-governmental network that was established to solve the social, economic and political issues of the civil societies. At the moment, where Tigray and its members are under a complete blockade, the network is working to be the voice of civilians in Tigray.
And the very purpose of our organization is, our network is to bring the participation of all stakeholders to address the issues and concerns of human rights in Tigray. And we have been working on that. Besides, we have also been initiating assessments, investigations, and also research related to human rights violations in Tigray.
Ambassador Wondimu Asamno says the presence of such associations play a great role in creating clear image of what's happening in Tigray, and as non-partial institutions, their participation in international crime investigation for the crimes committed on Tigray by different forces.
They are needed because there are a lot of investigations required, not only by Tigrayans, Ethiopians, but also at the international level. As you know, there is an independent investigation team formed by the United Nations Human Rights Council. I think that council, that team, may be, of course, assisted in terms of getting information from this kind of sources. So I think it has multifaceted purposes to us and to the international community at large in terms of getting credible, independent information on what happened in Tigray in the human rights sphere.
President of the Tigray Human Rights Advocacy Network says the association will take part in any future human rights violation investigations in Tigray, including with the recently formed non-partial investigation team.
We believe that all the human rights violations that are being inflicted on the people and on the land of Tigray are totally against the international humanitarian laws. And as part of this, we need also to participate in any inquiry of human rights violations or fact-finding in Tigray, be it by local actors or international actors that are interested to investigate and go through the fact-finding in Tigray. And as human rights advocates, we have finished our preparations because we have been conducting our own assessments and investigations related to the human rights violations in Tigray.
For the past 9 months now, Tigray has been under siege that has blocked the entry of all basic items, including food, medical supplies, and fuel. This is on top of the discontinuation of all the basic services, including telecommunication, banking, and electric services. Earlier this week, the Director General for the World Health Organization, Tedros Adhanom, described the siege in Tigray as one of the longest in modern history. Our reporter Selim Tigrai takes us through some of the sieges in modern history, including the one ongoing in Tigray. Let's take a look.
We are now 17 months into the war that started in November of 2020. The first 8 months of the war were characterized by gross violations of human rights, widespread use of sexual violence as a weapon of war, arbitrary and mass killing of innocent Tigrayans, and much more horrors committed against Tigrayans by the allied Ethiopian and Eritrean forces. The rest 9 months that followed the forced evacuation of the Eritrean and Ethiopian forces from most parts of Tigray were then marked by an all-encompassing siege on the entire region, which has led to a humanitarian catastrophe. Since June of 2021, when Ethiopian and Eritrean troops were forced out of much of the region, the entire region has been put under comprehensive siege where all fundamental items, including food, medical supplies, and fuel, have been blocked from entering Tigray. This is in addition to the termination of critical services such as banking, electricity, and telecommunication services. This blockade has left more than 6.5 million people in Tigray in dire need of humanitarian assistance, making it one of the longest and disastrous sieges in modern history.
No food has reached Tigray since mid-December. and almost no fuel has been delivered since August of last year. The siege of 6 million people in Tigray by Eritrean and Ethiopian forces for more than 500 days is one of the longest in modern history.
Siege is a military blockade of a city or fortress, or in the case of Tigray, a whole region where the besieged area is cut off from the rest of the world and denied of essential items, where in some cases food aid and medical supplies are included. If it denies civilians from accessing basic needs and endangers their rights to live, siege is considered a legal form of collective punishment. Regardless, in different corners of the world, siege has been used as a military technique to make the enemy surrender while starving and killing civilians. The siege of Sarajevo, the capital of Bosnia, is an example of modern history siege that has lasted for nearly 4 years, beginning from April of 1992 to 1996. The siege had cut people of the Bosnian capital of food, medicines, water, and electricity, with the city being bombarded continuously, leading to the death and injury of thousands of civilians. This had brought suffering to more than 400,000 residents of the city. The siege of Gaza, imposed by Israel on 2007 following Hamas taking control of Gaza, is also another example of a blockade in the modern history. This blockade has lasted for 15 years and has severely limited travel, trade, and everyday life for over 2 million residents of Gaza, and has cut off Palestinians from Jerusalem, which served as their center for hospitals, banks, and other vital services. In such and other cases, humanitarian corridors have been put in place since the mid-20th century and have served to ensure safe access to humanitarian workers and refugees in many places, including in Bosnia, during the Sarajevo siege. A humanitarian corridor is a temporary demilitarized zone to allow the safe passage of humanitarian aid as well as refugees out of a crisis region. Amidst the crisis in Sarajevo siege, in an attempt to save the lives of the people in Sarajevo, the UNHCR claims that it had coordinated a massive logistical operation between 1992 and 1995, where close to 950,000 tons of humanitarian relief supplies have reached Bosnia and Herzegovina, including 12,000 flights between 1992 and 1996, delivering about 160,000 tons of food, medicines, and other goods in airlifts alone, while able to evacuate as many as 1,100 people in urgent need of medical care. For the past 9 months of the blockade in Tigray, however, the Ethiopian government has refused to establish humanitarian corridors, allowing regional forces to obstruct humanitarian work. Because of this and the siege, there are currently over 6.5 million people in Tigray in dire need of humanitarian assistance.
Data from our office indicates that there are now 6.5 million people in urgent need of food assistance.
In a press conference held in Atlanta, Georgia, Senator Kim Jackson, who sponsored the Senior Resolution 800, calls for unfettered humanitarian access to the people of Tigray. The senator said the people of Tigray have been denied of food and water, and they're suffering in darkness that they have been cut off from the world. For more, Aragawi Gabram reports.
Members of the Tigray community in Atlanta asked Senator Kim Jackson and other members of the Georgia Senate to stand in solidarity with the people of Tigray who have been living under a total siege for over 9 months now. In the press conference she and her colleagues gave, Senator Jackson said that they have gathered to recognize the millions of Tigrayans who are suffering in silence and to call for unfettered humanitarian access.
This session, I sponsored Senate Resolution 800, calling for the unfettered humanitarian access to the millions of people of Tigray region of Ethiopia. The people of Tigray have been denied food. They have been denied water. They suffer in darkness. They have been cut off from the world.
Senator Alia Parent, on her part, said that, as leaders, including herself, must stand for the basic rights of all citizens, particularly for those who are facing injustice and oppression.
In Tigray, an estimated 500,000 people have died due to a combination of starvation and killings over the last 16 months. This amounts to nearly 1,000 people per day due to man-made famine and war, a truly unfathomable toll. War has prevented the passage of humanitarian aid, and as a result, starvation is being effectively weaponized against an estimated 7 million men, women, and children.
Recalling the famous motto, "Never Again," which global leaders pledged after the Rwandan genocide, another member of the Tigray community in Atlanta said the world has failed to keep its promise.
Women being assaulted in front of their children, in front of their parents, parents being threatened at gunpoint to sexually assault their children. Sadistic. Metal rods and nails and trash inserted into women's genitalia and their wombs. And Tigrayan women and girls being told by their that a Tigrayan womb should never be able to give birth. Insult to injury. Dehumanization, humiliation. 120,000 reported cases of sexual and gender-based violence. And that is the women and girls who are strong enough, who are able to come out and speak their truths. Because an estimated 22,000+ women are thought to not be strong enough or willing to report it because of cultural norms, because of fear of assaulters, because of trauma of mental. $120,000 women. You can't tell us that rape is not being used as a weapon of war. And that is a war crime. These, again, they're not just numbers. These are our mothers, our fathers, our sisters, my uncles in the concentration camps of the capital city. In 2022, concentration camps, imagine. In 2022, in a capital city, in a so-called civilized world. And where are we? Where is the world as the people of Tigray are perishing? And again, an estimated half of an entire civilization said to have perished if something immediate does not happen. If the world does not stand up and say, never again. Remember that? Remember you promised never again? Why doesn't that apply to my family?
Senator Kim Schofield sent her 5 words message to the U.S. and urged to stop humanitarian crisis that is happening in Tigray.
5 words for you. Can you hear us? If the United States stands by and does nothing, shame on you.
The Tigray community in Atlanta reiterated that the time for action to the international community is not tomorrow or next week, but today.
It's time for action now. It is time for the international community to speak up today, not tomorrow.